Hello, welcome back. I hope you're ready to fix the planet because I'm going to talk about Terra Nil today. I streamed the main campaign of this game recently. I was really excited to play and I ended up having a lot of fun. And also, worth mentioning, a portion of the sales for Terra Nil also support the Endangered Wildlife Trust, which they talk about it on their website, the Terra Nil website, so I don't want to go into it myself. I'm not super familiar with them, but it's a nice thing to know when you buy a game that it's gonna help the environment a little bit. So, also, hello, I'm Savalian. I make videos about games, development, and creativity, and I also stream on Twitch if you want to see some of this stuff live. Terra Nil is a game all about reclaiming a severely damaged wasteland. It's probably Earth. I don't know if they mention it. The world map is not shaped like Earth, but there are Earth plants and animals, so who knows. Also, a little warning, in this video you will see some mechanics that are unlocked later in the game. I did complete the game. This is one of the bonus levels that you get at the end, so if you want to go completely fresh and play for yourself, maybe throw this video on your watch later list and come back later. Okay, we continue. In Terra Nil, you have certain tools at your disposal. Every tool or building that you can build has its own requirements for where it can be placed, and once you place it, it has a different effect on the landscape. You can do things like clean the soil, irrigate it to grow plants, fill up riverbeds with water, blast big holes in the ground, set things on fire with a, quote, controlled burn. And a little later in the game, you can also affect the humidity and the temperature of the environment. So I'm playing through a secondary version of the first map, which is called Abandoned Quarry. Basically, once you beat all the maps, they unlock a challenge version of each map that make use of all the things that you've unlocked throughout the game, which is pretty fun. And the reason I'm not starting from the main menu is because I had to restart this map like 5 times before I figured out how to beat it. Every Terra Nil map starts with a barren wasteland, and it might have different landscape features on it. And then there are 3 phases of restoration. Phase 1 is cleaning up the terrain and restoring the plant life. So you have this currency to work with. I call them leaf bucks. You spend them to build more machines, and then you earn some back when you successfully grow some greenery. Or on maps with ocean, you also get them from purifying ocean tiles. This map does not have any ocean, so nothing to worry about there. And like I mentioned, each machine has certain requirements for building it, and that's really what makes this a puzzle game at its heart, is figuring out how can I get this machine where I need it when, for example, it can only be built on a rock or something like that. And that's the game, getting all your machines in the right place, in the right order, not running out of leaf bucks, and making a beautiful little plot of land that's full of life and not dead. Don't get intimidated by the fact that it's a puzzle game though. The main game is very forgiving on the recommended difficulty, which I forget what it's called, but I picked whichever one it was set to by default. These secondary levels have been a bit harder, but they are really gentle on your first run through, and it's a very chill game. I don't want anyone to think this is like an intense brain teaser. And the trick with phase 1 for this map is that windmills can only be placed on rocks, and there are not enough rocks evenly spaced throughout the map to get power to the whole map. However, what we can do that we learned in a previous map in the campaign is that if we blow up a fissure, it creates lava, like a lava source, and when lava meets water, it turns into rocks. So I spent a lot of time sort of staring at the map and thinking about where the fissures were placed and trying to figure out what the best way to distribute these wind turbines is. A couple of things to remember are that when you fill rivers, and I believe it works this way with the lava fissures as well, they have a larger range when they start at a higher elevation. So I started at the outer edge the edge of the map, which is the highest elevation, and I worked my way inward. Once you have power, you can add the toxin scrubber, which cleans the dirt in a circle radius around the scrubber. And you ideally want to place these with as little overlap as possible to get the most bang for your buck. And the next step is to irrigate the cleaned dirt. And you can only irrigate the clean dirt, so you can't put the irrigation down and then the toxin scrubber. It doesn't work like that. It has to be cleaned before you place it, and then it irrigates once and then it's done. And I had to be really careful here because on this map the leaf bucks are pretty limited. So instead of placing down all my power and working from there, I had to sort of alternate between expanding my range and then actually irrigating and earning some leaf bucks back, and then going back and adding more wind turbines, and being careful not to run out of resources. As you go, you can see your progress in whatever phase you're in the meter at the top left. You want to reach 100%, but that doesn't mean that 100% of the map needs to be cleaned. It's just like there's a goal. I'm not sure what the goal is, but this counts the progress towards your goal. So you can have some gaps, and I would recommend going for big splotches of land and not worrying about trying to get like an even solid coverage, because there is a way to fill in those gaps later, which I will talk about in a minute. Once you get to 100% of your goal, you advance to the next phase, which is adding biomes. The biomes are a little bit different on each of the 4 maps, which is exciting. It's fun to see which ones are coming up when you do the campaign. On this one, we have forest, wetland, and feinboss, I think is how this is pronounced. I had to Google it, and I think that's how Google told me to say it. And in the biome phase is where I got really stuck, and why I had to restart this map so many times, because in order to make forest, you need ashen soil or something that has been burned, and a burned building. But in order to start fires, you need feinboss, which requires trees, because you make feinboss by putting a beehive in a tree. So we need the forest to get the feinboss, but we need the feinboss to get the forest. Or so I thought. After attempt 4 or so of trying to use the lava somehow to burn the ground, I did just Google the answer for this particular problem, and it turns out if you use a dehumidifier, it dehydrates the ground, and that dehydrated ground is flammable. So, problem solved. I'm not sure I ever would have figured that out. I was really stumped. There are also multiple types of devices that burn the ground. The one on this level is the solar-based one, and you can only torch either feinboss, like I mentioned, forest, or apparently parched grass. And this one will spread to any nearby greenery. There's another machine in some other levels that burns in a circle and does not spread, so it's important to remember which one you have so you don't accidentally torch half your map. So this one will spread to any connected greenery, but it will not go like up a mountain or down a mountain, and it won't cross a river. So make sure if you need to start some fires, if you know you're going to need to do a controlled burn, either leave space of like unclean grounds, unirrigated ground in between the sections of your map, or just make use of the existing like river areas or something like that, so you still have some land left. I'm assuming you don't want everything to be a forest, but maybe. And I knew from looking at all the machines that unlocked in phase 2 that wetlands need to be on the lowest level in elevation. So bottom area is reserved for wetlands. So I ended up putting forests in the middle and upper areas, and then the feinboss, which needs the trees, around the edges of the forest. Something I didn't pay much attention to that I would recommend, because it adds a little bit of flavor, is the ideal biome requirements. If you hover over the machines that add these biomes, it shows you what the ideal conditions are. We just have humidity on this map, but there's also temperature and a few other options on other maps. And you need to get the conditions in the ideal range before you put down the buildings, just like with the irrigator, or it won't become ideal until something else happens to trigger that transition. Like you could put down another irrigator to get ideal grass to show up. I believe the rain later also can trigger ideal conditions. I'm not totally sure, but if you want it, it just makes it look a little nice. I think it also gives you bonus leaf bucks if you just get the humidity up first or do whatever you need to do. Increasing humidity on this map was a little bit challenging as well because of the lack of stones. The humidifier building, I don't remember if it's called that, but it can only go on stones and they can't be placed too close together, and it raises humidity based on how much water is nearby. So you do need to have like a good body of water near a bunch of different stones to get the humidity up. The irrigators and wetland buildings do a little bit of an increase of humidity, but it's much slower. So if you want to get into that ideal range, unlock some of the optional goals, you do need to actually use the humidifier buildings to control that climate. And I didn't even mention the optional goals yet. These ones are so compelling for me. I always want 100% everything, so these are optional goals for different levels of humidity, temperature, whatever other climate things the map supports, and you can see them by clicking on the arrow at the top right. You'll want to check them early in case you need to do a little bit of back and forth. So like sometimes the temperature needs to be below a certain point for one and above a certain point for another one. So you'll want to make sure you're adjusting the temperature or the humidity in the opposite direction first, so that you can just go unlock it and then go in the other direction to unlock everything else. The ultimate goal with the optional goals is to get the rain or snow to start falling. However, I will warn you, this is what I was alluding to earlier. Rain will irrigate and cleanse the land for you. So, if you have ashy soil that you want to turn into a forest and it starts raining, it will actually get erased by the rain. So you'll want to work really quickly or just wait until your forests are in place before getting the humidity up to get the rain. It usually takes a pretty high humidity for rain, so it's hard to do by accident, but just in case, I ran into this on a different map where I was trying to use the ashy soil, but it kept getting covered up with grass. And the goal of this second phase, as you might guess, is to fill all the biome bars. As you hover to place a new building, it will highlight how much of that biome it's going to add. You can move around to see what the most effective spot is. You can test out some scenarios, and you can always undo your last move, but you only get one undo. So if you do 3 things, you can only undo the last thing, and then you won't get your undo button back until you do something else. So if you make a mistake that's really far back, you might have to restart the map. You can either restart the whole map, or you can restart to the current phase. And once you have all the biomes filled up, you'll have a nice pretty little planet, probably with a bunch of ugly buildings in it, and you'll advance to phase 3. And in this phase, you're going to get rid of all the ugly buildings. The goal is to recycle all your buildings and introduce as many animal species as you can. I got myself into a really tricky situation here because they give you a very specific set of recycling buildings that I wasn't expecting, and so I needed to get a recycling drone, upgrade it to the flying version, place a monorail node, and then a recycling beacon. And I just didn't have enough to get that at first, so I had to go back. I had to try and see if there was anywhere I could irrigate or clean to earn those last few leaf bucks I needed, but I figured it out. And then once you start recycling, the recycled buildings give you some of these leaf bucks, so you're kind of home free at that point. Another piece of this phase is to reintroduce the animals to the environment. Once you build the Animal Research Center building thing, you can ping different spots on the map to see if it's suitable for a certain animal. If you ping a spot that is suitable, it will automatically be placed onto your map and like sort of unlocked. There are up to 3 requirements for each animal, and they show up. If you find a partial match, it will tell you what it is. So sometimes they want to be in range of certain types of tiles. So like in range of 10 forest tiles is one, or near a certain other kind of animal. Usually they're prey. There's at least one animal that requires the environment to be a certain temperature, which really tripped me up because the entire map is the same temperature, and so I wasn't really sure what to do because I didn't have that clue, but I just kind of stumbled on it by accident. Sometimes you might need to refactor some of your biomes to get them working with the animal requirements. Like if they need to be close to 2 different biomes, you need to have a part on your map where those 2 biomes are next to each other. But in each phase, you still have access to machines from all the previous phases. As long as you have enough leaf bucks, you can always, torch pieces of the map, grow a new biome, things like that. As you recycle, the recycling parts will also contribute to a little airship. I actually forgot to place my airship station until the end, but it's okay, it still counts. And once at least 3 animals are reintroduced, you can do all of them if you want. I certainly tried to. And once all the buildings are recycled, you take off in the airship. There's a big red button and you leave. Give the forest to the wolves and the swamps to the frogs, and they don't need us anymore. And once you're done and you have a finished map, you can click the Appreciate button, which is just a nice little mode that pans around to different spots on your beautiful nature reserve so you can appreciate all the animals up close. This is such a cute, serene game. The music is very quiet, first of all. This is one of the only games I've ever played where the music was maybe a little too quiet, but it's very chill, very peaceful. It does require a little bit of thought to play through some of these maps, like especially the second go around when they unlock the new versions of the map. But overall, it's very chill. It has kind of Dwarf Romantic vibes where it is like a strategy thing, but it's pretty low stakes. And even if you do really badly, it's still a pleasant experience. And like I said, the game is pretty gentle, especially on the like middle of the road difficulty. And there are 4 different kinds of maps, and this is just one of them. There's 3 others with really interesting different mechanics and goals for the map, which I thought was fun. It is not a huge game in terms of content. I believe I played through the main campaign in about 7 or 8 hours, and this second batch kind of feels like it'll be a little longer, so maybe total a 15 to 20 hour game. But it's a really nice time. You can replay the levels anytime you want. You don't have to just play through once and then stop. And then when you're done, you can admire your beautiful handiwork and just chill out a little bit. Let me know in the comments if you've played Terra Nil, or if you have any recommendations for nice puzzle games like this one. It's a speed and intensity of puzzle that I really like. It's not too crazy. You have time to think. I love that. It takes me a minute sometimes to figure out game puzzles, so I like when it's not too intense. But I'm always looking for good game recommendations, but no promises. I'll play the ones I'm interested in, and the rest we'll just leave in the comments for other people to enjoy. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to subscribe. I am Savalian. I make videos about games, development, and creativity, and I'll be back soon, and I hope to see you there. Okay, bye-bye.